2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brandon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
Does God want me to be sexual? What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast. I'm Brandon.
I'm Tyler. We're brothers.
We're therapists.
We're not afraid of your questions.
So bring it. Do you feel like no matter how much therapy you do, things really aren't getting better? That you'd like to accelerate your feelings of peace and empowerment because it's just not happening? As a man, do you feel stuck? Do you lack purpose? Do you not know what real masculinity is? Are you unable to create safety and passion and intimacy in your relationships? Are you lacking connection to God? If you're relating to any of these things, then you need to come to our Rising Sun conference. Tyler and I have developed a process and an experience for men to shift into their power, to know who they truly are, to experience their purpose, and learn how to connect to God. So go to risingsunconference.com. Now that's Rising Sun as in S-O-N, conference.com, and sign up there as soon as you can because space is limited. We'll see you there.
All right, Brandon, this is going to be a fun one today.
This is one of my favorite topics.
I know you have like a passion for this. You love to try to kind of mull over this one along with a couple of other topics. But
our guest is going to tee this up perfectly and hopefully bring some different angles to it that we haven't explored before. So, and yeah.
Well, we're excited to have a guest on today. Mitchell, welcome to the show. Thank you for your willingness to come on and share your questions. Glad to have you.
Hey guys, great to be here. Always enjoying the podcast and your banter back and forth and the good, open, honest discussions about all kinds of different topics.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, Mitchell, go ahead. Why don't you just jump in and kind of share whatever details you need to around the backdrop behind your question, and then ask your question. We'll get started.
Okay, I was raised in a religious conservative home, and always taught from the Bible and taught scriptures and taught morality and taught modesty. But now, having going through my own journey of freedom and from addiction and things like that, and having a daughter and hopefully one day more children, but it kind of brings the question to my mind. I was raised with modesty as such a pillar that I think that modesty brought about a lot of shame about my own body, I didn't wear shorts and didn't wear tank tops and was ashamed of my chest hair and all that, like all kinds of realms of body shame, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look back and review, I think a lot of my childhood and my upbringing basically kind of cemented some of that into me and developed that into me, this like shame because of the extreme level of modesty that was either taught from the pulpit or taught at home. And then my dad was kind of disconnected. And so from him, if I accidentally walked in the room on him changing or something, the door was basically slammed in my face. And, so it was I never saw any kind of body positivity out of him either. And for me, having a child, I don't want to raise my child against scripture or anything like that. But I also want her to be, proud of her body and comfortable in her body and not ashamed of her body. Because like for me, my wife and I had this discussion several weeks ago. When we first got married, I was terrified to be naked in front of her, horrified. Mm-hmm. And yet with all the excitement of sex and that sort of thing that it brought, I was like terrified to get naked in front of her, probably for a long time, And so it took me years. I'm 34 now. It took me years to where I would wear shorts. That's probably like in the last 5 years. And, or take my shirt off outdoors when it's hot and warm, whatever. It took me years to get that away. Mm-hmm. And so that would be my question is how do we train our children on that fine line of morality and modesty, but also confidence in themselves and in their bodies? And that's where I'd go from there.
It's a great question.
It's a really good question, Mitchell. Could I ask you another kind of follow-up question before we kind of dive into some of this stuff? You said you were raised this way. What were some of the specific ways that you were taught modesty? What were the messages you received? What were the methods that you learned modesty, or at least the version of modesty that you were taught?
Probably a lot of, it seems like modesty when you're taught it, a lot of it is pointed at in the church is pointed at women more oftentimes, in skirts and dresses and, not showing their cleavage and, skirts above below the knee and all that good stuff. But for men too, I think it's kind of a side. It's not as direct, I think, with men a lot of times in the church, but I grew up in church where it was suit and tie and that sort of thing. But, not wanting to tempt the opposite sex with your body, kind of more along that line would be more specific, I would say, of how I was taught, not tempting someone to be sexually drawn to you, essentially. Less specific for males than it was, very specific for females as far as how they should dress and not dress and, not wearing 2-piece string bikinis or whatever,
If we were to dig down even further, because I want to get to the beliefs that this rigid modesty system actually starts to develop. And so, it's one thing to be like, hey, like cover yourself up because like God wants you to cover yourself up. Like that we hear that at church, but then you take a little kid. And by the way, it sounds like a little kid who's also experiencing some father wounds, some emotional neglect or whatever it may be. So you take a rigid system, a rigidly moral system. So it's really kind of confusing because to be good and to get God to love me, I need to fall into line with this rigidity, right? And then you take father wounds on top of that, and you're really creating a recipe for faulty core beliefs. And I guess my question to you, Mitchell, is the message of cover up, be modest, don't be sexual. How did you interpret that for yourself?
How did I interpret it? Probably that, kind of the road you're going down, like sexuality, sexualized, that whole thing is basically wrong. The sexual side of you is essentially wrong unless it's only expressed in a marriage relationship. Like that's the only place.
But
let's take
it further, Mitchell, because you're even saying I have a hard time, I had a hard time being naked in front of my wife, right? And so the same question of what is your faulty core beliefs that you developed as a child is, what are you afraid of when you get naked in front of your wife, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. That's been quite a while ago now. Thinking about what I was afraid of, some of it I think is the self-image that I had. That my body wasn't good enough. Is kind of what I think. I was kind of the skinny type. I didn't fit the image that you see out there, whether it be through, the underwear models or the whatever pictures up on the billboard or the movie, the whole image that you have out there, this idea of masculinity, which y'all talk about a lot,
right?
Masculinity in a man and what that looks like. As I grew up through the 90s, there was a very specific image of that, that was that clean cut male, didn't have hair on his body and all this kind of specific image. And I didn't see myself as what that image of a masculine male was, I think. And so I think I was ashamed that I wasn't that, if that makes sense and gets any deeper. I don't know.
Absolutely. So I think you're bringing another piece of the recipe into play of just body image and shame, about just feeling like you're not enough. But it's this confusing thing of cover yourself up. It's dangerous. Your sexuality, your body is dangerous. But then there's this other part that's like, and your body's flawed. It's not good enough. You're not man enough, and you can see how it can lead to just not wanting to be vulnerable and not wanting to be fully realized in terms of your sexuality. So, Tyler, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, you just perfectly painted that picture of the dueling messages that are going on, especially for a boy as you're being raised between that. I don't know that you were taught the why behind the cover up in a proper way. And then you're living in a world where there's this projected image of what perfection is and what you should be as a man, or, a lot of times the media is pushing this for women even more so, but this is the perfect image of who you should be. Now you're being taught, don't show any of that stuff, but that's what you should look like, especially after you're married. And then there's this mix of emotions because there's the internal natural maturation that's going on, that's going like, I do have sexual feelings, but now maybe I shouldn't have them. And now maybe because I'm a little bit weak and scrawny or not like what the billboard shows, is I'm never going to be desirable to somebody. And that's what Brandon's talking about, like false core beliefs come in is, now this is going to have an impact on my ability to establish relationships with people. It's going to have an impact on my confidence. It's going to probably have an impact on my relationship with God in terms of how I see myself in the context of my relationship with God. And these dueling messages actually leave the person, you, Mitchell, it sounds like are a perfect example of this, in a state of pure confusion and this like place of like frustration and fear now, instead of confidence in knowing who you are and your true nature.
Yeah. Well, and I think as you throw in too, the weak father figure, for lack of better terms right now of putting it, and not having that input on top of the other messages that are coming in, and it compounds it even more. But I think this is way more common, and y'all bring this up pretty often too. I think this is way more common in our society today than what we like to realize or admit to in our society, this lack of father figure and all these messages that are coming in. And I think there's way more people similar to me than we really know.
But the tricky thing, and this is, Tyler, you bring up that this is one of my favorite topics, and it is one of my favorite topics, because there's this really tricky thing that the adversary does, like just tricky, and it's we're gonna teach you that modesty is like the way. And in doing so, we're gonna act as if, with this rigid sexuality beliefs, we're gonna act as if that is coming from God, that is of God, right? And so it's very rigid. It's very shut down your sexuality. Don't show your body. Don't do this thing, and it's taught as if that's the righteous thing to do. And the adversary wants to attack and assault sexuality more than almost anything, because that's our creative power. And in many ways, that's our way to self-realization and knowing who we are. And I mean, it's so much more important than just getting off, than just like enjoying sex. It's about understanding ourselves on some of the deepest levels. And if from a really young age, the first messages you're getting are shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. Oh, by the way, when you're 10, you find porn, so open it up completely, but just hide it, and feel worse about it because now it's really bad, right? And then that assault has fully taken place, and the shame is set in, and the adversary he's doing his thing. It's working now, right?
He's doing his thing inside the context of religion, which is pretty insidious if you think about it, because it's being purported as, as righteousness. And Brandon, like, I don't know if you were there or not when we were boys. We went to a fireside, a church fireside on a Sunday afternoon, and the topic was modesty, and the person giving the presentation had this beautiful cake, and they asked everybody if they wanted a piece of cake, and everyone raised their hand I want a piece, and then they kind of walked around it and coughed over it and put their hands in it, and then they're like, do you want a piece of cake now? And everyone's like, no, I don't want a piece of cake, and then they're like, that's what it's like when you mistreat your body, it's just pure, just the point is, hey, look, respect your body, and you want to keep yourself pure, right? But the way the messaging goes when there's not education behind it is that every kid walks out of that going oh crap, maybe I'm the flawed piece of cake now, yeah,
you're the dirty thing that no one wants.
Yeah. And I
mean,
think
that's yeah.
I think the other side to this though is that people like us sometimes go the other end of the spectrum, and we get on our high horse, and it's F modesty, do whatever you want, show your body, it's wonderful. It's actually, I think that maybe more in the middle ground is that we should be teaching the why behind modesty in a different way. We should be teaching exactly what Mitchell's talking about here, which is you should love and respect and be comfortable with your body. And part of respecting your body would include modesty.
But okay, Tyler, I want to go down this line a little bit. And Mitchell, I hope you don't mind that I do this, but Mitchell's wearing a tank top.
Mm-hmm.
You should see his face oh no. Mitchell, you must have done some work, right? Because here you are on a podcast talking about your sexuality, your body image, and you're wearing a tank top. So you must have done some work. But Mitchell's wearing a tank top, Tyler. Mm-hmm. Is
he the dirty piece of cake?
Yeah.
No, well, of course not. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying I think this is kind of where Mitchell's going is that he grew up in a way where he was never comfortable with his own body. He's, Mitchell, fill in the gaps when I'm done here, but he's worked really hard to get comfortable with his own body. And Mitchell, you're fine if you wear a tank top. I think the judgment part is where we would probably get in. This is a massive problem in the Christian religion is that you and I can sit here and look at Mitchell and be like, sinner, dirty piece of cake. It's no, Mitchell needs he needs to work out his own relationship with God and his body with God. And the rest of us should probably back off on that a little bit. But what I would say, Brandon, is I'm a father of 4 daughters, and I do want my daughters to love their bodies and to understand the reason why modesty would be taught in a Christian sense, other than the shaming part of it.
No, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. To love their bodies, wouldn't that mean to show their cleavage and show their shoulders and like be them and be who they are, wear a bikini.
Hey,
I want to ask Mitchell. What do you think, Mitchell?
Oh, that's the hard question, isn't it? Because you get right back into that religious side of it, where you see the Christian young lady that wants to wear the two-piece,
right?
And all of a sudden now we're in that judgmental side of it of, oh no, she's wrong, she's sinful, she's attracting people and making people think sexual things, when on the real side of it, we know that you can have somebody wearing bed sheets and a male can undress them just as quickly as they can somebody in a bikini, and fantasize about them just as quickly. But that's that tough part of what's okay and what's not, and what's, in teaching my daughter, what's that line that I don't allow her to cross, that I'm not comfortable with, where I'm not crushing her self-image, her body image, and getting into that judgmental side of it. And
to me, you guys, it's all about intention. It's like, if my daughters, and we're talking about little girls because I think they get attacked with this modesty thing worse than anybody. But if my daughter is, going to school hardly wearing nothing because deep down she doesn't have a sense of self and know who she is, and she wants a boy to want her so bad because she desperately needs some love, then I don't know if that's not healthy. It's not healthy to try to use that sexuality to fill in the gap of that low self-worth, right? Do you understand what I'm saying, Tyler?
Yeah, no, I think you're using the word intention.
Yeah.
And the word, I love that word that you're using, because I think that's at the core, as well as another word that's coming to my mind, which is objectification. So, and it goes along with this idea of intention, which is, if me myself, I'm wearing something so that I'm objectifying myself and I'm trying to find my value by becoming an object, that doesn't come from a place, to me, of knowing who I am and respecting my body and loving myself that way. Whereas, if I'm back to intention, if I'm not objectifying myself, then that's probably more in line than even lining out the specifics of, well, a two-piece, as long as it's this big, or, I don't know that the logistics of it, like the specifics of it, are as important as what you said, the intention, and am I objectifying myself?
Yeah. This is an interesting discussion, because as a dad, if my daughter's like, Dad, I want to wear the two-piece because I enjoy the sun on my belly. I can feel the breeze more. It's just like, I feel beautiful and I feel sexy, and when I can just get some sun. And could I really be like, okay, daughter, like, enjoy, because there's that part of me that's very much steeped in the modesty thing that'd be like, no, cover it up. Which, notice I said cover it up. Cover up her body.
But you're objectifying her at that point too, the other way.
Yes, through the modesty, right? So, this week I had an interesting experience. I was meeting with my staff, and we got in this conversation about how CSATs, so certified sex addiction therapists, are oftentimes, in fact, usually in conflict with sex therapists. So CSATs are about treating sex addiction and having people not act out sexually, right? Sex therapists are about sexual self-realization and expression and all of those things, right? In fact, there's some trainings where watching porn is part of their training to become a sex therapist. And what I was saying to my staff is, look, CSATs are at odds with sex therapists because they fight about this. CSATs are saying, shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. And sex therapists are saying, amp it up, amp it up, amp it up. But there's this, either side is problematic if you take it too far. And we talk about this a lot. Valerie Hammaker when she was a guest on the show, did a great job of explaining how the river and the dialectic between the two. The church is on one side really, 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 really rigid. The porn industry is on the other side really, really, really chaotic. And either side is going to hurt you. And it's the same thing with therapy. I said to my staff, I said, make no mistake about it, you guys. We may be sexual addiction therapists. We are sex positive. We like know that we're sexual beings and we are sex positive. Being sex positive does not mean like go run around naked, right?
Yeah.
It means yeah, go ahead.
Or Brandon, like I want to throw a question back at you with being sex positive. Then if you have one of your clients come out, or when we're talking about intention, and your daughter comes to you later on in life and she's like, hey, I'm feeling so beautiful in my own body and I've got this chance for free expression and Playboy has asked me to be their centerfold and I'm just going to do it because it's artwork and it's beautiful. Is that sex positive?
I want to know Mitchell's answer on that.
Well, I think that the intention and the purpose behind Playboy is objectification. So I don't think that would be a very good choice for her.
Yeah, I agree with that answer. But there's something we need to talk about a little bit here before we just jump to you better not. Right. Hopefully I'd have a good enough relationship with my daughter to have a discussion and say, like, tell me more about your intentions. Like where's this coming from for you? And why would this be something that you feel like could be really good for you? So instead of just like, no, you don't, cover it up, you better not, I connect to her and I know her and I understand her. And to be honest with you guys, I'm probably more likely to influence her not to do it if that's how I approach it with my daughter.
Well, because you're going to have her on your team, right? Like you're now showing interest in her, you're showing curiosity with what her intentions are. And I think it gives you the opportunity to also have influence. And the word that I'm thinking of right now is education, so it's like, we went on a trip to Hawaii last year. We took all our girls to the store to get bathing suits. They all tried on a bunch of bathing suits. And one of my daughters tried on a bathing suit that didn't have a lot of material on it, and she came out and she like said, hey, I look beautiful. Like this looks awesome, and me and my wife looked at her and said, okay, well, what do you like about it? And then she told us. And then afterwards we sat down and we said, hey, look, you also got to consider these things as well. And we as parents, I feel like there is an obligation that I have as a father to do some educating. And so the key is that I think we try to do the educating with curiosity and understanding, and with truly trying to teach principles instead of just laying down the rules. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the night, she had put that bathing suit back on the rack and she picked a different one, and she was still happy with it, and that was okay. But we can't, I think we can't absolve ourselves of the responsibility to teach. It's this, the teaching should be done in a more, I think too often as parents, we get such a knee-jerk reaction because we're so afraid that we just lay down the rule without the learning that goes with it. Yeah.
What Mitchell, you were describing is what Tyler's talking about. From what I see, where it really becomes problematic in terms of our sexuality, and it is when I see people coming from a rigidly disconnected family, so rigid with religion and the father wounds or mother wounds that are about abandonment, disconnection, and neglect. That's where somebody really just kind of survives through their shame in a lot of ways. Do you know what I mean by that? They don't know who they are. they don't have anybody safe to talk to understand their body, and so their shame says, shut it down, hide, act out, do whatever you need to do in order to survive, because there's not this safe ground. And Tyler, that's what you're talking about with your daughters. Mitchell, that's kind of what I'm hearing happen to you as a child.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times in the religious side of things, we hammer down these rules and expectations and standards without getting into just what you're talking about, down to the why, and
right.
why this is important, why we do this, why we don't wear that, or whatever the case is. Not even just outside of sexualization, we don't even get into these things. We just hammer down the rules and regulations, expect the kids to follow them, discipline them if they don't. Don't ask me why I told you, we kind of get into that a lot, I think, on the religious side of, in the religious community.
Yes.
And that doesn't help kids.
No, I agree with you, Mitchell. Brandon, I want to ask you another question, because I'm sitting here trying to think of what it's like to be a listener right now. And let's just say we've got some listeners right now who are Christian with children saying, okay, I definitely don't want to shame my children, but I still feel like I got to teach them. Like, what would a conversation actually look like or sound like? Like, where would you start? What would it look like if I was to have these kinds of conversations with my children?
Yeah. I mean, I taught a lesson in church 2 weeks ago, and it's very different than the knee-jerk reaction for a parent. Like, the knee-jerk reaction is, child, let me sit you down and let's talk about your sexuality. And let me tell you why, this is healthy and this is not. And that's not going to work. It's more than just a conversation. It's more than just a dialogue. Like, let me give you an example. Yesterday, I got home from work, and I was in the kitchen. My wife gave me a big hug right in the kitchen, and we just kind of started cuddling with each other right there in the kitchen. And my 3 kids were sitting there at the kitchen table, and there, me and my wife, in some ways, we were being sexual. We weren't doing anything, but there was that energy there of our sexuality and our love and connection for each other. I didn't say anything to my kids in that moment, but I did send them a message that this is okay, And I didn't. Now there's a line, I believe, and I actually, if I can get a little bit deep here, I don't believe that line is secrecy. I believe it's sacred. So there's a line that I'm not going to cross in front of people when it comes to sex, because I believe it's sacred, and I believe it's between me and my wife, even from my kids, right? So to some degree, I'm showing them, hey, sexuality is okay. To another degree, I'm showing them boundaries, because I'm not going crazy here in the kitchen, right? So can you see what I'm doing, guys? I'm not even having a conversation with them, but I'm teaching them something. And the energy in the house is very open about talking about who you are and what sex is. So did I answer your question?
No, I think it's a great start. Basically, what you're saying is it's more than just a single conversation. It's a way of living where you're stepping into things, and you identified 2 things. And I think this is kind of a doctrinal thing that we can talk about. And that if I'm a Christian person, I'm wondering how to use the doctrine in a healthy way. We were given 2 gifts by coming to this earth. And the 2 gifts that we received was a physical body to have experience with and to learn with. And it happens to be an imperfect body that's going to cause us problems sometimes. And we were given the gift of personal choice. So in the context of living our lives, God expects us to take those 2 gifts. It's the parable of the talents. And he expects us to either magnify those 2 gifts.
Preach on, Tyler.
Or we won't. And let's preach on. Sorry, I'm preaching the sermon now.
I love it. Amen. Keep going.
But Brandon, like, I'm bringing it back to what you're saying, is that's what you're saying between boundaries and also expressing love. It's like you're using those 2 gifts in a way now that aligns itself with what I believe the commandments of God would say, which is to amplify those gifts in ways that are pleasing to God by using your choice. And And those two things, I think, are things you can come back to over and over again with your children. Like, hey, you've got this gift and you've also got your choice. And how is this going to be like,
I'm actually hearing, Tyler, in what you're saying, Mitchell, what I'm hearing is that you had neither. The rigidity and the morality, like high morality, was you don't have a choice. You just do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the second piece to it was your body's not a gift. Like your body's dangerous and a problem in many ways. Is that?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. Yeah, not that direct message, but
yes,
spoken in that way. It's very indirect and probably assumptive as a child, and without that direction from the parent, the child is left to fill in those gaps. And I think more often than not, we go into those extreme sides.
Yes.
And filling in those gaps with extremities.
I think one thing that doesn't really get said is if I want my children to be happy and healthy and in terms of their sexuality, it has nothing to do with me talking to them about sex or their bodies. It has everything to do with me doing what I can not to wound them, and to just for them to know they're loved, for them to know that they're okay as they are. And if they have that from me, then all these conversations about sex and body and all those things, those will naturally happen. Because they're learning, they're growing, they're developing. If they don't have that from me, and then I go and I try to have all these conversations, then it's not going to work.
Right. Living that lifestyle is to me where you're hitting at. You live that lifestyle, have that conversation type lifestyle, where they're not just sitting down and having rules and regulations and hearing the whys, but seeing the whys, seeing yes. why we're doing this and living this way and how it is to live this way. Yeah.
If I go out to the beach or to the mall or something and I'm making comments and judging everybody in a tank top, and then I smile to my daughter and I'm like, hey, let's just talk openly about, but it comes back to the lifestyle, right? It comes back to who am I? What messages am I sending? And just being aware of that. And those are the dialogues in many ways that are not spoken directly, but indirectly given.
I'm thinking of the quote you hear all the time about how parents ask how you should raise a child if you're a Christian parent, and that quote that comes up that says you should teach them correct principles and then let them govern themselves. And I think the idea behind that is excellent, as long as we say teach them a full set of correct principles. So yeah, if you're going to teach the kids about modesty, you should also teach them about choice. And Brandon, what you're saying is even further, another correct principle is of their lovability as they are.
Correct principles is not fear and control.
Right. That is not, those are incorrect principles.
Yes.
Right. In fact, God is love. And so we should teach our children to operate from a place of love for themselves and others first. And then they can go and make the right choices based on a knowledge of who they are in God's eyes instead of who they're not.
Mitchell, I think you've uncovered another like Tyler's next career. Like, amen. He's a pastor, This is great.
He's doing good.
I love it.
Brandon's going to give me a hard time about this for a long time, Mitchell.
No, I love it. I really do.
We'll get to hear about it.
Well, Mitchell, I don't know if we've even gotten all the way down to your questions yet. Anything else on your mind? Other questions?
How do we counter what's being placed in front of them in the culture? The culture is putting it everywhere. It's in kids shows and the television shows and the billboards and on the packaging and in the mail outs they send. And, how do we continue to specifically battle those images that they're being shown as this is, a male, this is a female? I know part of it obviously is how we live again and what we display in front of our kids, but the images are so strong and the force is so strong from the outside on these false images or perceived perfect images. How can we specifically battle against those?
I think most parents try to make their kids avoid all of that stuff. And you're just pointing it out, Mitchell, is that it's kind of unavoidable. If we take a trip, we live in Utah, if we take a trip to California, we're going to drive through Las Vegas, but I'll just be honest that the billboards in Salt Lake City are just as bad as the ones in Las Vegas now in terms of objectification. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's everywhere.
I don't know about that.
Well, Brandon, I don't know, man. I swear to you that Utah's got to be like the plastic surgery capital of the world.
Well, yeah. Okay. But yeah, Vegas is a whole new level.
You're right. It's a different level. Either way, there's objectification going on, right? In the way things are presented, because sex sells and that's the way it works. And what most parents will do is like turn your heads or cover your eyes or, and I don't know that that's the right response. I actually wonder if sometimes leaning yourself into and through it with education and discussion is maybe a more effective thing to do, which is like to kind of make things pretty open and transparent as they're unfolding with their kids and use it as an opportunity to teach. Something pops up on a movie. Yeah, why don't you stop it and have a conversation and even ask first, like, hey, what are you noticing? Or what are you guys feeling? Or what are you guys thinking? Or, do you have questions about this stuff? And then it'll lead into an opportunity to have that discussion to teach those correct principles. Yeah. So what do you think, Brandon?
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead, Mitchell.
I think it is basically, in this day and age, is unavoidable.
Yeah.
With the media that's out there, the access on our phones, devices, your kids' friends have phones and devices, the ability to control like we did through, the 80s, the 90s, whatever, is going well beyond our reach as parents. It's just slipping away from us because the access is so great. And when you just teach your kids, I think, to turn your head, kids, at the billboard or whatever, I think you're driving them into that place of secrecy, to where in the future they're going to find it and see it, not necessarily pornographic, even just, flesh. They're going to see flesh. They're going to see the material. It's going to be presented to them. And if all we do is teach them when they're with us to turn their heads, I don't think that they're going to necessarily do that when we're not with them.
I just think if we think of kind of the end goal as dads, I want my kids to live lives of purpose, to step into courage, to, like do what God has made them to do. I also want them to have really healthy relationships and deep levels of intimacy and love in their lives, because I think that's one of the best things in life, right? So like I would love it if that's what happened with my children. And so if we rewind it back, to now, and we look at, okay, today, as I'm talking to my kids, if those are my goals, then my ultimate goal for my children, when I look at healthy relationships, stepping into purpose and having courage, there's one thing that creates all of that. And that's living a life of real actual faith and courage, and not a life of fear and shame. And so whatever I do as a dad, if my son looks at porn today and I take that opportunity to drive shame home and tell him how disgusting and wrong he is for doing that, I'm not helping him in terms of what I hope happens in his life. If my son looks at porn today, and let's say he's wearing a Speedo and he's looking at porn, like he's as immodest as can be, looking at porn, right? If I take that opportunity to help him learn how to connect, to talk openly, to have hard conversations, to express who he is, then I'm actually helping the situation, right? And it's my job to teach, and it's my job to provide some structure there. And that's an important side of the fathering, right? But doing that without the shame, without the control, without the fear-based model of trying to get him to be what I want him to be.
Which takes more work in some ways, because we have to be cultivating our own heart in order to step into that space with our child instead of just lay down the rules.
Exactly. So, Mitchell, it's been a pleasure having you here today. I think you're a courageous man coming on, asking these questions.
Dude, I love you, man. Yeah, thank you for coming and having this discussion.
No, thanks for having me.
And I love how you wore a tank top today.
I do too, man. Yeah, seriously, Mitchell, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to come on and share. It's amazing. This is a principle of truth, that vulnerability yields connection. And I know Brandon and I both feel connected to you. We've never even met you before. And I can tell you that I know that people who are listening will also be connected because they're struggling with the very same questions. So thank you for your willingness to put yourself in the arena today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitchell. We'll see you.
Okay, we'll see you.